How's everyone tonight?
Fine.
It is nice to see you this evening. There was a little technical difficulty back there. We don't have an outline for you. So do this. Take your hand and a pen and write on your hand.
You got the outline handy? Let me try. We'll give it one more try.
All right, one more try. So and we will hopefully see if something can work for you all. But we're just going to press on ahead and see what we can't do. And tonight we're going to be talking about the truth and how important the truth is in a courtroom situation. Maybe some of you have raised your hand and maybe put one on the Bible and affirmed or swore that you would tell the what?
Whole truth.
The truth? The whole truth? Nothing but the truth, so help you God. And we just we put a high emphasis, and rightly so, on the truth. And sometimes truth can really make somebody mad, can it? If you tell them the truth, they might not like it. Sometimes they want you to sugarcoat things. Sometimes they'd be happy if you just told a fib to them or a little lie, and that's not going to work. And so tonight Paul is going to be emphasizing the truth and the fact that as an apostle, he had told the Galatians the truth. I know some of them didn't want to hear it. I know some, like those Judaizers, came in and said, well, Glenn must have better luck than me. Good for him. All right, so there will be something for you coming right up. Thank you, Glenn. And so in Galatians 4, 8 to 20, we're going to have a key verse tonight of verse 16, where Paul says, "Have I therefore become your enemy by telling you the truth?" Now, when Paul first came to town and preached to them, the Galatians loved him and loved what Paul had to say. After Paul left, the Judaizers came in and told them a lie. And they decided the lie was better than the truth. And now these Judaizers said, you can't trust Paul. Paul doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to listen to us. And so Paul says, am I now your enemy, even though I told you the truth? And so that's where we're going to be going tonight. So take your Bibles and turn to Galatians 4, and we're going to kind of go through this section by section tonight. And let me read, if I can, verses 8 down through 11. However, at that time, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those which by nature are no gods. But now that you have come to know God, or rather to be known by God, how is it, he says, that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things to which you desire to be enslaved all over again? You observe days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that perhaps I have labored over you in vain. How about that phrase? Would you be able to say this for your own life? There was a time at one point that you did not know God, but now you do. How many of you are glad that you know God today?
Oh, yes.
And the truth of the gospel, the truth of the Bible. Now, how many of you would want to say, I know what the answer is, but how many of you would just say, okay, I'm done, that's it, I quit? Mary and I, actually, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, we invited a lady one time to go to I don't know if it was a Christmas or Easter cantata, and she just been there, done that.
Oh, yeah.
And just wanted nothing more to do with it. Now, how sad that is.
Yeah.
That you would just say, I'm done with church, done with the Bible, done with God, going to go do things my way. And what's the danger of that, by the way?
Eternity in an ocean of sulfur or something.
Yeah. That, imagine just giving up your salvation.
Wow.
Just like that. I'll tell you a real quick story. Back in my prison chaplain days, and it's a long story, I'm not going to get into it, but you actually, before you could change your religion, you actually had to come see the chaplain. And so this guy came into my office and he said, I want to change my religion. I said, oh? I said, what do you want to change from? He said, well, he named it, I think he said Methodist or Baptist. I said, okay. I said, what do you want to change it to? He said, Wiccan. Wiccan. Witchcraft.
Oh, really?
And you know, sometimes you're supposed to just smile, nod your head, and I just looked this guy I said, are you aware of the eternal consequences of what you're about to do? And he just looked at me and smiled and said, yep. And I said, okay. And off he went. And it just breaks your heart that someone could just, that easy, sign a piece of paper. Well, once we did not know God, but now we are known by God. Isn't that great? Well, what are some of the things that God knows about us right now?
Knows everything.
That's right. And for a few of us, that number seems to be dwindling. But for the rest of us, God knows.
Does that mean he doesn't know much?
Oh, well, you make it easier on him, I guess. He knows the number of our days, right?
You got to remember, this is an open top haircut.
There you go. All right, he knows how long we're going to live, right?
Absolutely.
Knows what we're thinking. Knows what we're going to do tomorrow.
Yep.
He knows when the sparrows fall.
He knows how many hairs on our head.
Yeah, we mentioned that one.
Oh,
Good job.
I didn't know
And so, God knows us quite a bit. But imagine Matthew chapter 7 and verse 23. When Jesus gives a warning, to some he will say, depart from me, I never knew you.
Scary.
Yeah. We like, if someone who is maybe important or a celebrity or someone with a little prestige, when they come up, oh, hey, how you doing? And they act like they know us. But every now and again, you go to someone who you think should know you, and they act like they've never seen you before. It's kind of an empty feeling. Imagine God saying, nope, I don't know you. I thought God knew everything. What's he saying when he says, I don't know you?
Not going to have anything to do with you.
There's no what?
No inheritance.
No inheritance. There's no relationship there, is there?
Togetherness at all.
Yeah. It's like we had the opportunity to become his children, to become part of the family of God. We just said, no, I want my fun. No, I'm going to do things my way. No, I don't believe that Christianity mess. I'm going to go do some other religion. Whose fault is it then?
Ours.
If God says, I don't know you. Ours. And we will bear the responsibility of that. And so Paul said that he's talking to people who once were Christians, the New Testament way, and now they have traded all that for something that isn't true. That's sad, isn't it? It's also scary, isn't it? That you could just so easily wander away from the truth. And when we wander, we find ourselves in danger of losing our salvation. Now, I know we're not here next Wednesday, so a couple Wednesdays from now, we're going to talk about that business of falling from grace, being severed from Christ, losing our salvation. We'll talk more about that in depth. But that seems to be the direction that Paul is going here in this text. Now, they were formerly, hey man, good to see you. Nice to welcome our Johnson University guy back here. Yeah. I'm sure he loved me pointing that out. He just came. All right. So in Galatians chapter 5, these people had been told the truth. They had been at one point slaves under the law. Remember, never able to do enough, couldn't fulfill the law, under the penalty. And now they found freedom. Amazing grace. Wonderful grace of Jesus. And Paul says, are you going to leave all that to go back to a way that didn't work? It'd be kind of like this. How many of you would like to go back to the horse and buggy age?
Might not be bad.
No, it might not be.
All right, now you say that, so you're going to get up and hitch up those horses every morning. You're going to give them the hay. You're going to water them. You're ready to do that.
Well, Harry will take care of the
Rush them
horse.
down.
I
Right.
can say sometimes
And you're gonna-
it's pleasing to
Okay, well, how about
Travel
this? How many of
5
you want to
miles an
go
hour.
back to the days when you had to go crank up the old Model A?
I did that.
Yeah.
Never experienced that one.
Some people, they don't even put the key in the ignition anymore. They just leave the key in their pocket and press a button.
That's right.
That's a little bit easier way to start a car, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
There's a lot of
Either
conveniences
go
that
back
we
to the
have.
horse and buggy. That push button is what it used to be years ago.
Yeah, just, giddy up and move them along.
No.
Anyway, formerly slaves, now they were free in Christ. They were part of the family of God. They could inherit. And Paul says, you're going to go back to that old way. It just doesn't make any sense. He says, I fear for you. Have you ever say something like that to a friend? I fear for you, you're not ready. I fear for you that you might go out into eternity without knowing Christ as Savior. I fear that you're not ready if Jesus comes back tonight. And so Paul says to them, I'm really worried about you. What does that seem to indicate? That Paul is so emotionally agitated or worried?
Over these people.
Yeah, what's that another way of saying? I fear for you.
He cares for you.
Definitely a lot of love and concern. We're going to see more of that in the next section. He's worried that they could actually what? Be lost.
Yeah,
Be
lose their
lost
way.
forever, yeah.
Now, and again, I know there are some people say, oh, I was a Christian once, I'm a Christian the rest of my life, nothing I do is going to change that. Paul doesn't seem to indicate that, though, does he? If Paul wasn't going to be worried about him, he wouldn't say, well, I fear for you. And so, this is some pretty serious material in this.
So Paul is actually worried about them going back to their old way.
Yeah, go ahead.
So now aren't we kind of like willing slaves to the commandments and laws?
Well, I wouldn't say to the commandments and law. I would take you over to Romans chapter 6, where Paul says we were once slaves to sin, now we are slaves of righteousness.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, and so...
We're still slaves to
Yeah, but it's a different kind of thing than what he's talking about here. Here he's talking about being saved by your good works and law keeping and being good enough. Paul says that's never going to work. But we are saved by Jesus and now we're his servants. And now we're trying to do things that please and honor him and advance the kingdom and those kinds of things. So, yes, you can say we're slaves, but we're in this whole better deal, a whole better situation than what we used to be. What's he going on about here? Their observance of special days demonstrate a mindset of works. But what were some of the special days and what's Paul talking about here? Remember, the Jews, what were they really big on?
The feast day?
The feast.
Yeah.
Can you name some of the feasts that the Jews observed?
Passover,
Passover is the big one.
Pentecost.
Pentecost.
Tabernacles.
Feast of Tabernacles.
There are more.
Feast of Unleavened Bread, and just the list goes on and on and on. What's basically the big day Jews observed every 7 days? Sabbath day. Man, you can't do this, can't do that. And they were, to say they were meticulous would be an overstatement. They were legalistic. I mean, can you imagine that the common thing they said is you couldn't walk more than 7/8 of a mile. And if you walked over that was work, and you couldn't do it. And so imagine being that meticulous. And Paul says, you observe these days. Romans chapter 14 and verse 5. Someone turn over there and read that for me, please. Romans 14 verse 5.
Got it? One man considers one day more sacred than another. Another man considers every day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind.
Okay, now, a week from tomorrow, most of us will be heavily involved in turkey, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. That's a green bean casserole. That's all I need. And I'm happy.
That's what you like.
But there may be people that don't really care about eating turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, pumpkin pie. Are they wrong if they choose not to observe that day?
No.
We might say they're foolish, but they're not wrong. You know, they haven't, committed a sin. There are some people who say, you got to do this, this, and this. And other people who say, no, we're not under that bondage anymore. There are some people who say, no, you can't eat pork. Can't eat shrimp. Can't eat, a whole list of things. And we say, if I want a piece of sausage, or but in my case, bacon, or pepperoni on that pizza, we just eat it. And we're thankful to the Lord that he gave it to us. But some are saying, man, if you eat that bacon, you're going to hell. If you do work on Saturday, the Sabbath, man, you are lost forever. And Paul says, no, that's not really where we're going here. Paul's concerned that his ministry has been in vain. What does in vain mean?
Empty, without
Empty?
no meaning.
Worthless?
Nothing to it.
Nothing to it? A waste of time. I mean, these are sad things. He says, first of all, I fear for you that you're going back to the old way. And now he says, I'm worried that I have just wasted a good part of my life with you. Because you basically said, I don't believe a thing you said, Paul. I remember finishing up a ministry where I spent a lot of time teaching on the Bible's teaching on how to become a Christian, specifically baptism, because there was a whole lot of people there that just week after week after week heard it and just ignored it. And it was like they didn't hear a thing I said, or even worse, they didn't believe a thing I said. And I just said, my conscience is clear, because I've told you what the Bible says here. The rest is on you. And here's Paul saying, I'm worried that I have labored over you in vain. And as we mentioned, the Galatians were risking the status of their salvation. Go ahead.
I think probably this in vain business he was concerned about is even greater, has a greater depth to it than we even understand, because we were not in Paul's shoes. We only go by what we read and so on, and what we learn from church history, such as that. And I think this is really eating at him so strong that he's actually worried about it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Paul, there's that old phrase about some preachers have 7 good sermons in a fast car.
Yeah.
Which basically means that they come in and they give their sermons and they're somewhere else. They don't really care.
Yeah.
They did their thing, got their check, and moved on. That's not Paul. You're exactly right. And if you really want to see a good example of that, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, where Paul says, I was like a nursing mother with you. And then a few verses later he says, I was like a father imploring you. And then when he gets kicked out of town later by the Jews, he says, I felt like I'd been orphaned from you. A mother, a father, an orphan. That's not a guy who doesn't care about people.
Absolutely.
That's someone who cares an awful lot. And so Galatians 5:4, we'll come to that in a couple weeks, where Paul says, you have been severed from Christ, you have fallen from grace. And so anyone who just says, once saved, always saved, apparently has not dealt with that verse very well. All right, the truth about relationships. Let's read Galatians 4:12-15. It says this, I beg of you, brethren. Now, you might just want to, you can do a little study on this. Paul starts out Galatians very strongly. Remember that? I am amazed that you are so quickly deserting the gospel. And he just, to borrow a phrase, rips into them. And he's taking the authoritative tone. I'm an apostle, you're not. And you need to listen. And now as we start to get to this part of the letter, he's being a little bit more conciliatory. Being a little bit more family friendly. Being a little bit more, I'm just so worried about you brothers. And so you need to listen here. It says, I beg of you, brethren, become as I am, for I also have become as you are. You have done me no wrong, but you know that it was because of a bodily illness that I preached the gospel to you the first time. It's kind of interesting. Paul says, I had an illness, and that's what brought me to your neck of the woods. And that which was a trial to you in my bodily condition, you did not despise or loathe, but you received me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus himself. Where then is that sense of blessing you had? Get this. For I bear you witness that if possible, you would have plucked out your eyes and given them to me. Now Paul is a false teacher. Now Paul is a rotten guy. Now Paul is someone not to listen to. And Paul said, what happened? When I got to town the first time, you guys would have given me your eyes if possible. Not anymore. So, they had a relationship, but that relationship had obviously changed. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. You may know this one. It gets used quite a bit. Paul says, to the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Does that mean Paul changed his doctrine just so people wouldn't be mad at him? No. What's it mean, to the weak I became weak, to the strong I was strong, that I might win some?
You stepped into their shoes.
Okay, you got a for instance in there?
He adapted his presentation to the particular audience that he's dressing.
Okay. All right, for example, now, certain congregations have certain ways that they do things. Some congregations are very formal. We're talking shirt, tie, jacket, everything is just prim and proper, right? Ladies always wear a nice shirt, got the hair, the makeup, everything working fine. Is someone coming in sandals, a t-shirt, and cutoffs going to get very far?
No.
Probably not. But likewise, there are some congregations that are pretty laid back with the sandals, the t-shirt, and the cutoffs. How is a guy coming in the three-piece suit, perfectly done hair going to work out?
Well, he's gonna feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's not going to match up very well. And so, like if you want to do a church on the beach, the suit isn't going to work out very good, is it?
No
Now, you might want to find some sandals that day. And so Paul says,
shorts.
I tried to adapt. I think Glenn's right on the money there. I tried to become as you are, but did Paul ever change his message?
No.
Ever change doctrine? No. Heard something back in my studies I always tried to remember. Methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, principles never do.
That's good. That makes
And
sense.
so, nowadays we got the PowerPoints and we got the projectors and we got the this and the that. That's fine. I have it on pretty good authority that on the day of Pentecost, Peter did not use PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Place where I'm going to preach this Sunday, I had a conversation with the preacher, and I don't know that they're going to have the PowerPoint available. I said, that's okay, we'll make do. I think I can get through it. Paul didn't change his doctrine, but he did accommodate his methods to meet his audience's need. I think that's pretty important. When Paul first came to the Galatian region, they had a really strong relationship. I will put it like this. Paul came and evangelized these people who were non-Christians. They became Christians, New Testament way. Paul taught, they listened. Paul gave, in service, and they had a good, healthy respect, and in Paul, and then they accepted Paul and ministered to him, and his physical condition did not turn them off. You talk about that, though. Paul says it was because of a bodily illness that I first got to you. All right, we've kind of given a hint here. What do many people think Paul's illness was? Some type of vision issue. Now, remember, this is 55, 56, give or take a little bit AD. They didn't have these things. Pick on my what? What's that?
They didn't have
No cataract surgery. Mary keeps a good selection of eye drops at all time. They didn't have eye drops for all the eye ailments.
No contacts.
And I know we just ate, so I'll be nice here. If you had some type of infection, they didn't have penicillin or amoxicillin or other type of antibiotics. And I imagine that could be a gross thing. And Paul says, that which was in my condition you didn't despise or loathe. Now, I know none of you would do this, but maybe some. They've seen a person with a physical ailment, a birth defect, some type of issue, and it kind of, you just don't want to look at it. Maybe it kind of grosses you out a little bit. Paul says, I had something in my life going on, and it didn't gross you out. You still accepted me, you still loved me. What does that say about the Galatians here at this point?
They didn't judge him by his physical condition.
And very true, and more than that, how did they feel about Paul?
They were ready to receive what he had.
Yeah, Paul loved them, and the Galatians loved him.
Right.
To the point that if indeed it was an eye issue, I got some scripture we're going to take a look at here in a minute, that if possible, we don't even do eye transplants in 2016, but if they could have done an eye transplant, they would have done that.
Wow.
They would have said, Paul, you need these eyes more than I do. I mean, and just imagine sacrificing your vision, your sight, for someone. And that's what, I mean, that tells you how much they loved Paul and how much they knew that Paul loved him, that they would do something like that. So, what was the bodily illness? Most likely it was a vision problem. A couple scriptures here. Someone turn to Galatians chapter 6, verse 11. Galatians 6, verse 11. And then 2 Thessalonians 3:17. We already read Galatians 4:15. What does Galatians 6:11 say?
You see how large a letter I have written unto you with mine own hand.
Yeah. Imagine Paul. Now, again, he's got vision problems. He's probably right over. And in order to see what he's writing, he had to use big, bold letters. Paul says, see with what large letters. Where were we the other day, Mary? We saw, we were at Red Robin the other night. And they had this nice chalkboard with all these menu items and specials. And I mean, the handwriting was just amazingly good. And I looked at Mary, I said, I'd never do that. She just kind of smiled because my writing is messy. I'm the first to admit it. And, people just say, I don't know what you're saying there. And so Paul says, see with what large letters I'm writing to you. Far bigger. You know how kids write in big block letters? Maybe that's what Paul had to do. You all had that nice, sweet little cursive because you did learn cursive back in the day. Paul says, I have to use big letters here. All right, what's 2 Thessalonians 3:17 say? They're in your Bible somewhere. Help me out here.
I, Paul, writing this greeting with my own hand, and this is a distinguishing mark in every letter. This is the way I write.
The way I write. How many of you used to be able to tell someone's who it was writing to by their handwriting? You know, back when my mom was still living, I could always tell when she wrote me a letter or sent me a card. I just recognized the writing. And you probably recognize, someone's writing till today. And Paul says, I'm writing this greeting with my own hand. This is a distinguishing mark. It's the way I write. And so I really think that Paul did have something wrong with his vision. And I might even suggest that this could be his thorn in the flesh that we read about in 2 Corinthians.
If this be true, think how hard he labored writing 11 books.
Oh, absolutely. This was not, we sit down at the keyboard, and we're just, just typing out as fast as we can. Not Paul. Paul occasionally used someone to write it for him. Scribe's a good word. There's another word, I feel like picking on our Bible college guy, but I won't do it. The word is amanuensis. And the amanuensis was someone that basically took dictation and wrote it down. If you want an example of this, look over in Romans 16. Paul's given all these greetings, greet so-and-so and so-and-so. And then there's a verse that says, I, Tertius, who write this letter, send greeting. Who's Tertius? The guy that Paul used to write 16 chapters of Romans. And so Paul may have got in and said, well, let me write the final words here. But many times he did use someone to help him out. Now, I just want to say we aren't told with certainty what the thorn in the flesh was. But we do know that Paul prayed how many times about it?
3.
Good job. That education's paying off for you now. All right, 3 times. And the answer was no, and God basically said, my grace is sufficient for you. So Paul had to live with it, whatever it was. There's other theories, but ask your 2 Corinthians guy on Sunday about it sometime. A strong argument. And so I really believe the thorn in the flesh was a vision issue. Yet the Galatians would have at one point done anything for Paul. Now they rejected him. How do you go from, here's my eyes, Paul, to I don't ever want to see you again. I don't want anything to do with you. You can hit the road. You've told us lies here. Paul says, have I become your enemy? Verse 16. for telling you the truth. All right, any questions or thoughts down this far? Go ahead, Morgan.
Well, it's just apparent that these people were ready to soak up what Paul gave to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's apparent. But I believe probably that when these Jews came to them and talked, they were ready to soak up that too. Because they wanted to learn the Word of God. And, you know, it seems to me that if they were not ready to soak this thing up, they would have kind of questioned it and said, oh, wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute, Paul says this, and so on.
Right, well, Paul will say I think it's in the pastoral epistles, that there are some who are always learning, but never coming to a knowledge of the truth. And we probably know some folks who, if I tell you this today, oh yeah, that's right, and if someone else tells you something different tomorrow, oh yeah, that's right. You know, look how many different views people have on the book of Revelation, just as an example. Oh, that's the best class I ever took. And then someone else comes in, oh, that's the best stuff I ever heard. And it's different, totally.
You know, thinking about this relationship thing, one illustration that comes to my mind would be like a child being rejected by a parent, or vice versa. You love them deeply, and all of a sudden they don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. You think that would hurt?
No, it breaks your heart. Absolutely, for parents especially. That's
Either regardless what side you're on there.
All right, let's read on here a little bit. We've seen the truth, you know, in the first part here, the truth about being free, don't go back to the law. The truth about relationships and how at one point Paul and the Galatians got along really well, but that wasn't the way it was now. And now the truth about false teachers. Now, let me just stop and point something out. There's probably going to be very few things that I say that are more relevant and more 2016 than this text right here. Because some of the very same tactics used by false teachers, cults today, is what they used back in the first century. And so when those cult members come knocking on our door, I was riding through Lakeland today, and I saw two men with black slacks and white shirt and name tags on, and they were on either side of a girl on the park bench. Mormons are out. The Latter-day Saints are out today. Cult.
2 husbands?
Let's read verses 16 to 20. Paul says, "Have I therefore become your enemy by telling you the truth? They eagerly seek you out, not commendably." What's it mean, commendably? Go ahead.
No one said that? No one official?
Well, if something is commendable, what is it?
Good.
Good.
Good intentions. Good intentions. Yeah, they went out, but they didn't go out with good intentions. Oh, I thought anyone who talked about the Bible was a good guy. I don't want to speak bad about anyone who teaches the Bible. Do you?
Well, that's the way a lot of people think, though.
Okay.
But they're not teaching it right.
Oh, but they love God, so it's okay, right?
Yeah, let me tell you which way we want you to believe.
Yeah. And see, in our politically correct society, we can't say anything bad about him. How many times have you heard some non-Christian on TV get in the face of a Christian and say, Jesus said, judge not?
Yeah.
Well, that's just like, that's their go-to verse. Totally out of context, totally wrong, totally not true, by the way, about judging.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we see these people on TV, oh, you shouldn't say anything bad about that guy or that lady on TV, because they're believers too. But if their doctrine isn't correct, what?
They're bad.
Problem. Because they're leading people to hell. That's a problem. And Jesus said, anyone who leads a child astray, what would be better to happen to him?
Big millstone.
The millstone. And James chapter 3 and verse 1, here's a free verse for you. Let not many desire to become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such you'll incur a stricter condemnation. I'm going to be judged for what I teach you all. And if I don't do it right, I'm going to have to answer for it. And so there is some sense of responsibility and hopefully some humility that comes along with that. So Paul says, they eagerly seek you, not commendably, but they wish to shut you out in order that you may seek them. It is good always to be eagerly sought in a commendable manner, not only when I am present with you. Look at verse 19. my children with whom I am again in labor. Ladies, again in labor.
And guys who've had kidney stones.
That means he really hurts for those people.
Yeah, okay.
Saying,
Until Christ is formed in you. But I could wish to be present with you now and to change my tone, he says, for I am perplexed about you. Let's talk about these false teachers a little bit. They used a tactic that is very popular with cults today. What is that? I don't know why there's a hyphen in there, but probably needed one some time ago. They separate the converts from their former life, their family and friends, so they feel they have nobody. And that the only one that will listen to them are the cult members. To give you a classic example. Have you ever heard of L. Ron Hubbard and the Scientologists? That would be your Tom Cruise crowd.
Scientology,
Kirstie Alley and some of those Hollywood nitwits.
John Travolta.
They will talk about that when they joined the Scientologists, they were taken away and not given access any longer to their former friends, family, whatever. They were shut out from them. That is, the only relationships they have were with other Scientologists. Does the name Leah Remini ring a bell with anybody?
Yes, she was an actress.
She is an actress, was on Dancing with the Stars and that kind of stuff. She used to be a Scientologist, but finally decided that that wasn't for her anymore. And so she's now, the word is shunned.
Yeah.
I mean, if she and Tom Cruise were in the same room, Tom isn't going to talk to her. Can you believe it? How horrible that would be to be ignored by Tom Cruise.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, we'd
I
be
feel so
crushed.
bad.
But that's what the Judaizers did. You can't listen to Paul. You can't talk to him. Don't listen to anything that guy says. So the only ones they would listen to would be the Judaizers, false teachers. Well, you know, if all you're getting is false teaching in both ears, what?
It's gonna take after a while.
You're going to take, and you're not even going to be able to hear the truth any longer. And so they seek you out, but not commendably. These people did not have good motives. In 1 John, John says, they went out from us, but they weren't from us. For if they'd been from us, they would have remained with us. And what they were teaching was not true. And so John says, don't
I'm
listen.
convinced in our culture today, the principle you're talking about is far more reaching than we even realize.
Yeah, I mean, we have some mass media capabilities today that they did not have in Paul's time. We mentioned the Scientologists. Hey, any of you remember David Koresh and the Branch Davidians down in a little place called Waco, Texas? And again, shut off from the rest of the world. You know, some of the same thing. I don't remember the guy's name. Kind of the offshoot of Mormonism, big polygamist who wanted to have his own little colony
Oh,
where he
yeah.
could decide who's marrying whom and how many wives y'all get.
Isn't that kind of what the Amish thing do?
What's that?
Amish?
The Amish now, they are definitely living in their own communities. And, you know, they don't, I think their thing is not using any of the conveniences.
That's a little different.
And now, you know, I'm not going to tell you that their doctrine is right because I don't think it is, but if they need to have some type of dialogue with English people, as we're called by them, then they would have it, and so on and so forth. But I would not put them in the same category as a cult.
Amen.
Were you going to say something?
The one now, were you thinking of Guyana, Jim Jones?
Jim Jones down in Guyana, he was the guy that led 814 some odd people to drink the Kool-Aid with cyanide.
Yeah.
But this is what the sects do.
Control issue.
It is a control issue.
I used to hold concerts for people like that up in northern Indiana. And what places had old wooden buildings back that they built and so on. And go around back with their horse and buggies and time around back. And the big guns, the big Amishmen, would pull their Cadillacs up with their big black hats. And they would come and listen and love the concerts and things and talk to you. And, converse real well. So they didn't cut anything off.
Yeah. back close to where Mary's from in Iowa, there's an Amish area, and they had a little grocery store. They didn't have much electricity except for their electric cash registers. Because I guess Uncle Sam says if you're going to have a store, you're going to keep some records. So they did do that, but that was about the end. I don't even know if they had freezers, though. Did they have
They
freezers?
had ice.
Yeah, they have ice to keep stuff cold.
Yeah.
But other than that, they didn't do much, but they had to have enough to keep a cash register or computer running. These cult members, these false teachers, deceptive and dishonest. And so, go ahead.
Isn't it easier because Paul came there and stayed for a while and then he left, and so these were not Christians that have been Christians for years and years, and so sometimes it's easier to convince people who aren't as strong in their faith and have been there.
I think so. And what do we have that these people would not have had?
The Bible.
Bible,
Yeah.
printed book.
The Bible, that's the book for me, right? And so they didn't have the completed New Testament and really the Old Testament as well. And so we are way better off. Let me just encourage you, if you live in a community where people can walk up and down the streets and so forth, when people do, I guess they can't do it where we live, can they, Morgan? Like cult members coming in just wandering. So we got that going for me. But anyway, if anyone's ever comes up to you, don't be rude and hateful. Do not be insulting. Like you're going to burn. You're going to, you're Satan's spawn. Don't do that. Just say, I have a church home that I go to. Would you like to hear about that?
Tell them the gospel.
Exactly right. And to see if you can find a way to share the truth, even with those who are in darkness. But the reason I say don't be mean and hateful even if you want to, because many times they'll look at that as, I got persecuted for the Lord today. And so it just kind of motivates them to go on.
Wow.
Whereas if you're just polite, no thank you. And if you don't have the time, I've said that many times. I'm sorry, I know what you believe. I don't believe it. And I don't have time to talk today. That you can do that. But yeah, being rude is never a good idea. And so I just encourage you there. Even if sometimes we might be tempted to. Paul says about the Galatians, he calls them my children, whom I am again in labor with. Now, for those of you who have delivered children and how much you love those little babies, aren't you glad that was a one-time event? Bringing them out one time, that should be enough. And Paul says it's like I have to birth you all over again. He said, I'll do it. Because the truth is that important. And your souls are that important. And so, if you can just imagine, and Paul oftentimes uses these illustrations I mentioned already out of 1 Thessalonians. He says, I was like a nursing mother, gentle with you. And you just see the mom with the baby and just being so very nurturing and loving. Paul says, I was like that with you, Galatians, and you know that. We had a good relationship. The other time he talks about the father, sometimes, mom was all sweet and dad was the by-the-book guy. And if you screwed up, you had to answer to dad. Kind of thing. He laid down the law. Paul says, I could be gentle, but I could be strong when I needed to. But a father who disciplines out of what?
Love.
Out of love. Because he wants the best for the child and knows it's important. And so Paul says, I was like that with you all as well. And now he's wondering. He says, I could wish to be present with you, to change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. Paul's saying, I just don't know what happened. We were on the same page once. Now you've just kind of gone off the deep end. I'm worried about you, want you back. But ultimately, whose decision was it going to be?
Theirs.
It was going to be theirs. Paul says, I'm perplexed about you. I wish I didn't have to talk about these things. Wish we could talk about other things. It says we need to go back to the fundamentals of the faith here. And you just get an idea of how, I don't know if worried is the right word, but concern certainly is. And love for these people certainly is.
When in doubt, always go back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, any thoughts or questions on our text tonight? Y'all been so good, I'm gonna give you next Wednesday off.
Aren't you nice? Thank you.
You're welcome, and we will see you next week.